Good morning. Good morning, and welcome to the informal meeting of the Savannah-Chatham County Board of Public Education. This meeting is live streamed, so hello to all of you at home. This is an informal meeting. At our informal meeting, we do not take any votes. This is information only. Thank you all for joining us today. First on the agenda is something new that we will have each month. We will have a report from one of our board members on a committee or a conference that they attended or whatever. And we're going to kick off this month with a report from yours truly. I'm not singing.
Where's the piano?
Oh, no. It's not.
Mr. Moss, does that mean you want me to facilitate Q&A when you're done?
There you go.
Just kidding.
Nope, not that one. It's this one.
Exactly.
They know. It's on the desktop. It's Bowling Green. Sorry.
If you use the arrow key. Oops. Okay. All right. All right. So this is a report on a trip that I took to Bowling Green, Kentucky with RISE. It was a trip on observing the best practices in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And I subtitled this, What Happens When City, Private Sector, and School Districts Partner for Greater Opportunity for Students. Oh, I got it right. So what is RISE? RISE was an organization formed by CETA, Savannah Economic Development Agency, to capitalize on the capabilities of 6 regions in our area. This trip was arranged to bring together representatives from K-12 education, higher education, and industry from the various counties. Next, we were going to observe the best practices in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Our first visit was to Bowling Green High School. A few highlights of this visit. Sorry, let me go back. Their Performing Arts Center at the high school was state of the art. They had a orchestra pit that lowered. It was amazing. They had a swimming pool that was not only used for competition swimming, but it was used as an incentive for students as well. If you'll look at the picture of the courtyard, the way that school was, and this is the new building, by the way, the way that school was built, the courtyard included an outdoor stage, ping pong tables. It was really encouraging students to be outside more. And I know Ms. Grabowski is smiling and Ms. Hall is smiling thinking about that. So I have a picture here, and you may wonder what that is. That is a room full of laptops. One of their pathways is computer repair. The students, get this, the students at this high school repair all of the laptops for the district. The students are paid, but they repair all of the laptops for the district. Here's some of the best practices there. Bowling Green contracts with local nonprofit to provide greatly reduced childcare for district employees. $400 per month is what their teachers are paid. And for those of you who are familiar with the cost of childcare, that is probably about a quarter of what you normally pay. Based on this trip, and locally, Effingham and Bryan County also provide childcare at reduced rates for teachers. Bowling Green High School provides free breakfast and lunch for all of their students. They also, it's great, they also have a sort of a coffee house where the students can come in and get coffee in the morning and snacks, all of that. The next thing, we visited one of the elementary schools, and this is where the partnership with the chamber comes in. The Bowling Green Chamber of Commerce committed to help Bowling Green Public Schools. They raised over $1 million to place Leader in Me curriculum in every elementary school. In fact, they were so committed, they wanted all of these schools to be what is known as legacy schools. And legacy schools are basically Leader in Me on steroids. And we got to visit one of the schools. The interesting thing about the Leader in Me legacy school is the goals trickle down from the administration to the teachers to the students. The students buy in, the students set the accountability. The students keep each other accountable. They have accountability partners in their classroom. Each class has, if you go to their classes, you will see a mission statement outside their classrooms. Each class, each student can tell you what their goal is. And they break the goals down to weekly, monthly, and yearly. And a lot of it had to do with scores on iReady. But the students are setting these. In fact, this is the interesting thing. When there's a parent-teacher conference, the student leads the meeting. The student leads the meeting. The student says, I am supposed to be at this point. This is where I am. And they said it was a task to get parents dialed in, but seeing and we talked with some, and these elementary students, we talked to these students, and it was so exciting. These kids were so impressed with what they were doing. And they told us what their goals were. And so learning starts with relationships. Leadership opportunities equal student ownership. And that's what it was all about. The students own their own education. Everyone has the capacity to grow. Meaningful growth happens intentionally. And that intention starts with the students. That is it. Questions? Yes, Ms. Hall.
What was the enrollment of Bowling Green High School? Do you remember?
Yes, it was, I think, 1,500.
Oh, okay.
It was a major high school.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And this was a new school that you.
It was a new building. Yeah.
I would just, all well and great. How do you believe we could scale some of the things that they are doing in a school district of around 4,500 students that actually resides relatively close to each other in a 7 square mile radius to our district of 35,000 over, I can't remember the geographical size. Like I'm all for childcare. Childcare is really easy when you're in a 7-mile radius versus, I can't remember our drive from one side to the other of Chatham. That's, fully support that. I want that to happen. We've discussed it. It's going to have to be hubs or something like that, but it gets really difficult to scale things. So did you have any thoughts on how some of these things would become scalable to something 10 times larger?
We would have, and we have Dr. Watson, Sean, and I've talked about this, is we would have to have childcare spread out across the district. What I liked about what they did is that they contracted with another nonprofit to provide the childcare. And that's how they were able to do it for the entire district.
And I was able to visit last year,
Yes.
Year before. Leader in Me was super impressive. Every teacher speaks Leader in Me language, every student, even when you go out in the community.
Yeah.
The community understands Leader in Me, and they can talk about it. As a result of learning there and hearing from workforce development partners here in our local region about the need for soft skills. Our kids come to them with industry-level certifications, but they often don't have the leadership characteristics and other soft skills needed to be successful. So this year we applied for a state grant, and I believe we have 6 schools that are now Leader in Me going through that training and implementation. So that's an example of one of the things that I learned and was impressed with that we came back and implemented immediately. I was also extremely impressed with the partnership between the chamber and the school
Yes.
system there. It is amazing. And we are working to cultivate that same partnership here in our local.
Yes. Ms. Grabowski.
Just piggybacking on the Leader in Me, at the expo on Saturday, I was speaking with Myers Middle School about their work with Leader in Me, and they are just doing great things. They are seeing their school enrollment. I think she said they've gone up over 100 students in 1 year in the enrollment in that school, and they're just seeing tremendous progress. We already know about the other work that Myers has been doing. And I actually just had a conversation with someone this weekend about Myers in particular, and I was so proud to talk about the progress and the work that Myers is doing in really growing and just the academic growth that they've had, and then also the implementation of Leader in Me. So I am excited to see that we are doing some of these things. We're also doing some of these practices already in our district, but I think it gets, like when my children were at Charles Ellis, students were always an integrated part into our parent-teacher conference, because that's part of the Montessori approach, the child leads. So I really appreciate you bringing this back to us. I think it'd be great to see what some of these things we're already doing in our own district, to be able to showcase and see how we can, in fact, replicate those and scale them up. So great conversation. Thanks.
Ms. Hall.
I also think that piloting things is a good way to scale. Let's pilot. We may not be able to have a swimming pool at every high school, but maybe if we have it at our new Chatham High School and kids get involved in competitive swimming, then it'll be easier. So let's start piloting. One thing that concerns me, though, is sometimes I hear comments around this horseshoe, and I haven't heard anything about Leader in Me except at Myers, and that's kind of because I know some of the kids who go there, but that's not something that we as a group talk about much. That needs to be an informal session. What is this, so that we can all be channeling it out? Because I don't
Absolutely.
know enough about it to really go out. But we need to talk more as a group, so we are all sending the same message.
Yeah, yes, that's why we're doing this. Yeah.
I appreciate this. I've been
Thank
asking you for this.
I know, right? Thank you. Thank you. David?
On free breakfast, free lunch, fully support. I would love the district, I know we've discussed it multiple times, but we've, under new leadership throughout, to look at, I think it's community eligibility provision.
19th, you all will get to help.
You're welcome for the setup.
We'll be bringing something formal on February 19th.
To finance or to
Retreat.
retreat? Okay. That'll be a nice treat.
Mr. Kachmar.
I'm going to be a curmudgeon because that's my role. These are all fantastic initiatives and fantastic things. I've been on the board 13, 14 years, Connie. Every 2 or 3 years, we hear about this great leadership development program that was doing wonders somewhere, and we start it, and then we don't implement it with fidelity, and then it kind of fades away. And then a year or two later, we hear about this great leadership program that's new and the hot thing in the New York Times, and we implement it, and then it kind of fades away. Tanya, you're nodding your head. Like, if we're going to do something, let's do an ROI on what are we doing already in schools that we're dabbling with and not doing well, and let's adopt something and then stick with it. I still remember my first month or two on the board, Dr. Lockamy started talking about Massachusetts. And he said Massachusetts did something different than the rest of the nation. Massachusetts, the legislature said, here are our goals, here's what we're going to use to get there, and they didn't mess with it for like 15 years. And, you know, they weren't perfect, but everybody got really good at what they did there without dabbling every 2 or 3 years. And one of my pet complaints is every 2 or 3 years we find something new and shiny and adopt it. And which is fine. If the thinking has advanced, if the science has advanced, and when we're polishing the silver on what we're doing, great. But on this, if we're going to adopt Leader in Me, what are we doing in 7 different schools because somebody thought it was a good idea 2 years ago that we're not doing with fidelity? And then on the other things we're doing, I like the pool, I like the childcare, I like everything. But if we try to do 19 things, we're not going to do any of them well. I would ask that we prioritize what's most bang for the buck and what our people are asking for. I would argue it's subsidized childcare for our staff, and particularly because surrounding counties do it. Let's do that right the first time and get really good at it before we scale it up. What we've also done is try 1 or 2 things at different schools and we're okay at it, and then we try to scale it exponentially, and then we get even worse at it. Not worse at it. We don't do as good a job as we could. So let's just be deliberate, get rid of the stuff that's marginal or not working. I like all this stuff. I'd support it. Let's be intentional about how we adopt it and what we take away.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things that you just said, in Finance Committee, we talked about return on investment.
Sorry for missing finance.
And you actually have an initial list of programs that we are looking at and evaluating, and some of what you just said is tying into that process. But I do think we have to do innovation. I tend to look at innovation in pilot form. If you're going to fail fast and get out, right? But if you're seeing progress, watch the progress, study the progress, and then codify exactly what made it a success, and then replicate. And some of that requires work with our principals, because as you all know, every school has a different principal, every school has a different culture, every school, and so sometimes when you lay a program down in front of a principal, they want to put their own spin to it. So there's a balance between fidelity and letting principals lead, knowing their specific school context, and you got to strike a good balance there.
Howard Hall.
Yes, and that was my point also, is targeting the needs. Once you have a needs assessment, target the needs, because every district is uniquely different. District 8 is different from District 1. So the piloting is a great way to start, because it just depends on what district needs what particular thing. And then overall, we know that as a whole, our teachers do need, or our employees do need assistance with childcare. So that's something we can look at, the big picture. But as far as those small things, it'd be definitely great to target the different needs per school district with a pilot.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Boss,
Yes.
before you go. So where do we go from here with this before, this was lovely, but we move on? So how do we, that's why what Stacy taught us was so dynamic. We have something now to use. We have a framework that we can kind of put this into. Is this a retreat? Are we putting this like on the retreat?
This is, yes, a part of retreat conversations, budget development conversations. I'll remind everyone that we have a strategic plan that will continue to be alive and well for the next year. But within that year, we'll be transitioning to a new strategic plan. So we need to be thinking about our vision for the district and what we want to capture in that plan. And some of these concepts and ideas could be captured there. I didn't change a lot of the strategic plan this year because it was in place, and I wanted to allow it to live itself out through 2026.
So
But
if
the
9
next
of us
strategic-
agree at the retreat that we'd like to see employee childcare,
Yes.
then we'll be able to start developing that.
We're already working on it.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Ms. Grabowski.
To Ms. Hall's point, so I think it's good that we're going to start this practice of sharing at our informal meetings, but I think as board members, one of the things we have to do, kind of piggybacking on Mr. Katchmar, is take this in as information. There might be an immediate action, there might not. It may
Yeah.
just be something for us to have additional context and awareness of. So I do think we have to somewhat resist the temptation, maybe sometimes say, oh yeah, let's pounce on that. So just for what, if that's helpful, Ms. Hall, in thinking about how we use what we're hearing today and in future meetings.
And
But,
thinking about going slow to go fast, every one of those things requires a lot of change management. And while a decision can be made sitting up here, to actually put things into practice and implementation takes months.
Right.
Because you're working through varied groups of people to cascade, to train, and it's not a light switch. And so, to Mr. Cashmar's point about doing a few things, my orientation is to do few things better than a lot of things and not do them with fidelity, because I understand the amount of energy, time, people, and money it takes. One little initiative that may be an easy vote up here takes months of time to implement well.
Dr. Watts, I'm just thinking about our discussion. If we're losing 72,000 children across the country to charter schools, and that we need to be as innovative as we can be to, and the birth rate is so low, some of these things might, we're not moving and going anywhere because Savannah Schools has, so I want us conservative.
Right.
Absolutely, but I also want us,
To continue to innovate.
That's right.
Yes, absolutely.
Anyone else? Okay.
Great conversation.
Thank you. Good morning. So I have the pleasure to introduce our next speaker. Ms. Lynetta Mills is going to give us an update on our KPI for transportation.
Good morning. I'm
morning.
excited to be back with you. And I was here in July, and we had lots of conversation at that time, but we have some updates as well. Yeah, it says. All right, so today we're talking about strategic priority 4, which is efficient, effective, and equitable resource stewardship, which includes transportation, nutrition, etc. So this objective B is enhance transportation services to support student academic readiness. So the reports, the key performance indicator, reports on the percentage of morning transportation routes completed on time or early on the total morning routes as recorded by our transportation management system. So we do have a vendor that has an on-time report that we work with. So our baseline was 62%, and we have set that as an increase for 2%. Now, our current, and this was as of December, and I've got an update for you today. So as of December, when we were at the last board meeting, we were projected to do this presentation, but ran out of time, 75.7%. So last week's figure is now 76.54. So we have been able to increase. So what that's based on, it's based on time and early. So when we look at the bell schedule, we also have an arrival schedule for our buses. So that gives students about 20 minutes to go in, get breakfast, get off the bus, get breakfast, get to class. We also then have our bell schedule, which is the on time. And then, of course, after that time would be late. So if we look at the early, which is our arrival time, 6 minutes prior to is considered early if it goes before that. And then on time would be 5 minutes before the bell. And then anything after that, 6 minutes after, would be considered late. So we include early and on time together for on time arrival to get that percentage. Now the total that you're seeing at the bottom and the breakouts for each is the runs. So for each segment that a school bus does to get from the student's pickup time to the school is considered a run. And whatever a bus does for the entire morning, and this was all predicated on the morning, would be considered a route. But the 16,000, would be for runs that make up a route. We have broken down the reasons that this may throw some things off and why we can't have a better percentage. So if you look at that, we have it broken down by traffic, by driver being late to work, by breakdowns, other, which could be considered a fighter on a bus or a disciplinary bus, situation on a bus that may delay that bus. It also could be weather, a weather-related situation, or accidents that could cause it to be late. All that is encompassed in the other category. And then coverage. So that would be, we don't have enough employees. Our fleet director has a great background in, and he has some wonderful skills in data. So he was able to put this together for us, and this is something we use primarily internally for our dashboard. On the left-hand side, you will see at the bottom, he has broken it down into the number of days, the number of weeks, each school. You can go in and look at each and every school, the performance. On the left-hand side is a dashboard that is displayed in our transportation department for the teams. So each supervisor team is broken down. And so they look at that as something for competition. And we have seen that, the correlation between obtaining more drivers and the on-time performance has increased with more drivers. So, tactic highlights, some of the things that we're doing to try to make it better for our district. Route optimization, and this is something that we have partnered with a third party. It's already in the implementation process. The projected completion date will be the end of February. So with that, we'll be able to look at, is our routing team missing something? Is there something we could be doing better? Is there a better utilization for some of the buses, better pairing for some of the routes that we have, some of the runs that we have? So we're hoping that that will garner some improvements to our transportation. As far as fleet update, during COVID, many of those buses just sat, which is not good for any vehicle. A lot of things start going bad, tires start going bad, all the filters and things like that. So we are removing, and we don't need as many buses as we needed before. So we were looking at targeting 102 buses. I know that says 100. We were actually targeting 102. We've been successful at being able to sell off 65 of those. So we still have 37. Many of those are already posted on GovDeals. But, looking at, is it worth keeping those? Do we have the skill? Do we have the manpower to get those back in running condition? And that was not an option for us.
Quick question, how much do they generally range in price
For a new one,
that we're selling ours for?
you know, Mr. Gleeman, English, who is our fleet director, would probably have a better gauge on that. I know one of them was like $80,000, which we were surprised at that. But he is at state inspection today, so our fleet is being inspected by the state today.
Mr. Kachmar?
2 questions. Have we offered excess buses to our charter schools?
Most of our schools do have a bus. I don't know if that goes with the charter schools, but most of our high schools do have a bus.
Well, some of them are paying private companies to provide transportation, and have talked before about using school buses, and they hire drivers. At least tell them we have excess property for sale and see if they're interested, number one. Number two, for years, we've talked about trying to recruit and retain more drivers. If we get rid of all of our excess buses and then suddenly we recruit and retain drivers, they have nothing to drive. Like
Yeah,
what
we've
kind
looked-
of flex capacity are we retaining so that if we add 15, 20 drivers, they have something to do?
Yeah, we've still looked at that data, and so we've got the number of routes that we would actually need and the number of drivers that we'd actually need is 256, just to get on time for what we have currently.
That doesn't include adding back choice or
That
charter.
does not, correct. And we've got that in the
My understanding
presentation
is
as
we
well.
still will maintain a % over what we need.
Absolutely.
Just in the event, even if a breakdown, you need to exchange it. But we're not,
Correct.
these are buses that really needed to go because they were just sitting and becoming an eyesore. And we're not going to, I promise you, we're not going to go down to the
Absolutely.
bare minimum. We will
And
have
Mr.
a
Cashmore,
%
too,
over.
we have started to create a replacement cycle for that, so.
And we also have
We
EV buses, smaller
Yeah,
buses
okay.
coming.
Because we should already have a replacement cycle that I think we put in place years
We
ago.
did not. When I came in, we did not have a replacement cycle.
Having to do this now.
So we are building a lot of things that, for whatever reason, weren't here.
And we have more flexibility in the size of our buses. We were all excited at a retreat a year ago. We didn't have to buy 80 passenger buses. We could buy 15 and 20. And so I'm assuming we're doing more of those. We talked about assigning 1 or 2 of those buses to each high school and middle school for field trips and stuff.
We just don't have them yet.
Okay, but are
Yeah,
those in the
And that's in the
works?
presentation as well, to talk about the Type A buses.
Okay, I will stop talking now.
That's
Dr.
quite
Howard
all
Hall.
right. Inquiring minds want to know, right?
Yes, I noticed that it's 10% with breakdowns, and I know that we do have buses that break down. So what is the process to ensure that the mechanics can efficiently repair those buses by receiving the parts on time? Because many times, once a bus breaks down, depending on why it broke down, they have to wait on those parts to come in. So could you kind of talk about the process to ensure that that is being done with the efficiency in time
Yes,
that they
and I
can
think
get
that
those
might be
buses back on the
covered a
road?
little bit in our discussion about the audit findings, because I know that was a problem. There were a lot of problems with the audit findings, which was about the parts. So if you can give me just a few minutes, yeah, we'll get to that as well. Okay, and that's actually at the bottom of the slide, so we're actually can go there right now. So we looked at the audit. The audit had several findings. Number one, we lacked an SOP. So that is in development. It is close to being finished now. And so we have to do some training on that SOP with all the employees that are in the parts department. So we're looking at an automated POS system for parts. We're also looking at a third-party vendor that has a state contract to make our parts department more efficient. They would have more buying power than we do personally. So they would have a nationwide buying power where we have to rely on local vendors. They could probably also get it at a better price. Yes, they'll still have an upscale of maybe 7% over what they're buying it for. But I think that would improve if we were able to go forward with that. And right now, it's in our procurement department. They're tweaking some of the contract verbiage, and we'll go back to look at that with the vendor to see what we can do to improve that. But I think through that initiative, I think that would streamline some of the parts issues that we might have today. But you are absolutely point on. So we're looking at an enhanced hiring strategy as well. And we have right now one of our directors that not only has to be a director, being out there to support the drivers and monitors and doing all those things, he has been doing a lot with the HR department for hiring. So we're looking at potentially adding a position there so that person can just focus solely on hiring. Some good things there. If you recall from the July presentation that I did, there was a 5-year trend that every year we were losing 12% of our drivers. I'm just talking about drivers. This year, we are actually seeing that trend stop, and we are at 8% of an increase. So we have increased. Now, we've hired or recommended for hire 25 drivers. However, we only have, with some attrition and some people just not completing the training, we have 18 drivers this year that we didn't have last year. So hence, you see that correlation with the on-time transportation. So we are doing everything we can to improve the culture, to retain those drivers, to recruit drivers. We are trying everything we can. As a former teacher, I want nothing more than to see the day that we can transport all of our students. And I think I speak that for our entire staff at transportation. Yes. I guess that shouldn't be me to call on you. It should be Mr. Moss. I'm sorry.
Yes, I have a question about the bus drivers, the recruitment, and that's good to see the 8% increase. I know that, if I'm not mistaken, they have to have a high school diploma in order to operate a bus. What can we do to say if people who have GEDs and CDLs and are eligible, what can we do as a district? Or is there anything that we can do
I am so glad you
regarding?
asked that question, because we've been fighting to have that removed. And fortunately, we are going to be able to remove that. We do need to update a lot of job descriptions to make it so that a driver that comes in without a GED or a high school diploma can move up into other positions. So we're looking at how we can tweak some of those so that they can have a career path.
Right. Mr. Smith?
Thank you for your presentation thus far. I want to ask a quick question that may come up in the next few slides, I'm not sure. But I know that we're talking a lot about the lack of drivers. A moment ago, we spoke about the mechanics in the department. That triggered my mind to ask this question. Do we have a lack only of drivers, or do we have a lack of employees in the department as a whole?
We have 88 vacancies currently, various different functions. But yes, we do have a deficit in mechanics. We have been fortunate to recommend 2 for hire recently. I told our fleet director, I said, did you take their temperature? Because some of these people are leaving better paying jobs to come to us. One had been here previously. He had moved to Atlanta, but was making more money. I said, that's fantastic. Thank God's shining on us.
Beautiful. Tell me this, throughout the state, do you feel that we are competitive in our packaging for employees, mechanics, et cetera?
Absolutely. And I think with that compensation study, I think that did help. And I'm sure that the raise that was approved has garnered some of these additional drivers. So again, I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Ms. Hall?
Dr. Watts, if we started looking at GEDs and pathways and that, would that go across the district? and not just in transportation, in terms of people who cannot be hired now because they don't have a GED? Is that a pathway, say, for,
Other
Yes.
operations. So my understanding was this was a limitation that only applied to transportation. I actually learned about it at a gas station from a former employee who saw me checking out one day and wanted to have a conversation with me. And she used to work for the district and but did not have a high school diploma and was having trouble coming back. So I brought that information back to the team, and they immediately responded and have been working on it. My conversations with Mr. Ramon Ray is that the application of the GED was limited to transportation, that it didn't necessarily apply in other roles, but
Yes,
I'll
well,
let him respond.
Yes, thank you. Prior to this, prior to the request from transportation, we have been doing this with SMP and SMP assistants and school and custodial workers. So that's been about 2 years now we've been doing those, but this will be in addition to what we're doing there. We did have an agreement with Savannah Tech for those employees to go through and get their GED. So we're still trying to work through that process, so employees still will be able to get their GED even when they go through transportation. So this is in addition to what we were doing, but it's just expanding it.
okay, and so custodians are we already,
The data that was pulled previously was like a couple of weeks, and so it wasn't the whole year. So we are redefining things, and we are getting things where they need to be. And we will continue with this. I think, I've already said how many drivers we have now, and we can only think that it's still, even with refining some of that data, the current need looks like it would be 342 to be able to include choice transportation as well.
I want to ask
Yes.
this question. With the route optimization study that we're having done, that could actually reduce that number, though.
Yes, it could potentially
That's based on our
reduce that.
current routing
Correct.
processes. But as we find out more from the route optimization study, that may make that number lower.
And that would be exciting. And
I will
that's
also say
exactly why we're
future
doing that.
boundary changes could also impact that number, where we place choice programs. If you've got a family living out in West Chatham County and they want to go to Savannah Arts, that is a tremendous bus ride. So as we look at adding programs to new high schools and changing our programs, I'll be looking at regionally, how can we make sure that there is access, because that will limit the miles that a bus has to travel to transport a student to and from. So there are lots of strategies that may reduce the number of drivers that number shows right now that are being worked on. Right now.
Like I said, expected completion dates end of February for the route optimization piece. So we're trying everything we can to make a difference here in Chatham, Savannah-Chatham. All right, carpooling app. That's one of the initiatives we talked about in July. So schools could use a carpooling app, and I know a lot of parents do this already. So the app, the vendor that would supply the application, they could sign up at their local school. We would have, our concept was to go out to schools, bring that vendor in. That vendor has done this in multiple ways in many different districts in the United States. They have not done that in the state of Georgia. It matches students with potential drivers. So a parent may sign up as a driver or to have their children driven by one other parent. They would receive turn-by-turn instructions, just like if you use Waze or some other navigation application. It's very similar. It also provides them with our on-time arrival with Here Come the Bus. It's very similar to that for parents. And so it's on every platform for smartphones. And we were saying that if a parent not only transported their child, but also transported other students in that school, that they could receive a stipend for that. Now, we sent this through the legal department. There are risks to the district for that. So we may not be able to move forward with that.
Yes.
I mean, I guess I would love to stop and chat. I'm sure other people do too. I can agree to having like the software to help connect with enough boilerplate language that says that we are not held at risk for anything, because we can have car insurance, but our bus drivers come, they're seen by a team lead before they get on a bus. The bus is checked before they leave. We have protocols for if that bus breaks down, another bus is coming. I mean, I can just sit here and in 10 minutes come up with so many scenarios that I don't ever even want to see on the news of, well, the normal, yeah, mom usually does it, but she's sick, so uncle, brother, cousin, who hasn't gone through our stuff, hops in the car, and who knows, I just, no, thank you. But if we can have an app that helps link people together and there is no exposure, I can get with that, but I cannot get with paying out, I mean, this is a pittance anyhow, because I just can come up with way too many, and I'm sure Lee could come up with 10,000 more. We can play a game. We'll play a game today. How many bad scenarios can you create if we just let random people pick up, you know, everything I was taught in the 80s we now do? Like get in a car with strangers. Like,
Run with scissors, yeah.
yeah, so, no thank you.
All right, so I'm going to skip this because it does.
Next slide.
I'm always hot, so.
Now we are at the type A buses that you were asking about before, Mr. Castmore. So as we talked about in July, that adds a whole different pool of drivers. So that although they still have to have the same training as a CDL driver would need, which is the 19 units from the state DOE, that is done here in our district, they don't have to have the CDL. So that is very attractive to many of our bus monitors who could make more money and, you know, have a more responsible role and can do that. But they really are too afraid of the big bus, or they have issues with passing that CDL requirement. So right now, we just received the title for 2 of the buses. I know we were expecting to have them all delivered between December and January. But due to some manufacturing delays, it looks like most of those will be coming in May. So we don't have everything that we need, the requirements for the license plates and all of that through the state. Like I said, we just got those titles, so in the next few weeks, we'll be able to see those being implemented. In fact, we could have already used some of them, so we're excited. Even though it's delayed, we are excited that it does give us another option. And I know we had 17 jobs that would be for these drivers, and we had 15 applicants. So as soon as we get those licensed, we'll be able to get some people on board with those. Now, revamping the CAT partnership.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Howard Hall.
Yes, I have a question. I see that the 14 buses, the smaller buses, and that's great to do. But due to the growth on the west side of the county, with so many students being out there, do you see a need, or do you think that we should be ordering more larger buses to transport more students to cover those routes? Although this is a great idea, but it's not going to be efficient when it comes to transporting a large number of students within those districts with that high enrollment.
Great question. So when we looked at our replacement cycle, Dr. Watts, did you want to say something?
I'll let you go
before?
ahead.
Okay. When we looked at our replacement cycle, there are some buses that will be, and these are the larger buses, that will be coming up for replacement. So in the future, yes, we need to be looking at doing some purchases for some of those larger buses. Now, one of the 84 passenger buses now is almost $200,000 a piece. So there's a big jump in price for those. We are looking at a I think well, we had 81 passenger, 82 passenger. We're looking at 84 passenger. That's on a different chassis. That would be more like 150,000. So we're looking at
I
those
will just add, I
options.
think we need a mixed portfolio. So yes, we do need larger buses, but when you think about transporting McKinney-Vento students, again, across the district, many of which do not live in proximity to where they go to school, these are places where these smaller buses help us. Students that may have missed the bus on the first route, you can send a smaller bus out to retrieve those students faster than you can a big bus. A big bus can move on to a different, larger pickup, field trips, athletic competitions. If you're taking a volleyball team of 12, you don't need a big 82-passenger bus to go to do that. You can use a smaller bus. So I'm really striving for a mixed portfolio of buses so that we can utilize them in the most effective way to meet our needs.
Okay, now I do understand the purpose of having the smaller buses, but do we have a bus driver with doubling up routes?
Yes.
Having to go back because the bus is too small to occupy those students? Will the larger buses reduce?
We do have
The
some
number of
situations where
routes?
our buses are overcrowded. That sometimes is due to not having enough drivers, and again, we're trying to solve that through more drivers. I think you just got to find the right mix.
Right, okay.
Okay. Ms. Grabowski, then Mr. Gatchmar.
So I'm thrilled that we are getting these smaller vehicles and 100% agree about having a mixed portfolio of what we're using. And I know you're going to talk about CAT now, but if we look at the trends of transit, they are moving from only large buses to these smaller vehicles for microtransit because of the increased flexibility. And it seems to me that maybe there's a little bit of the carpool idea that fits in with the smaller vehicles that would really, to me, the opportunities in these smaller vehicles is also for our choice schools. Because then we have pockets of students within an area, and it's a smaller number, and we don't have to have the CDL. Maybe we can recruit a parent who might live in that area and happen to be one of the parents of those children, and then they actually are an employee, and we get around all those things. So part of my question is, particularly with these smaller buses, will these be located closer or on the campus of our schools versus being at our fleet facility? Because it seems to me one of the barriers is if a driver has to drive all the way into town and then go back out to West Chatham.
Yes.
That's a huge barrier. So hopefully we'll disperse these
Yes,
physically
We
around.
have been looking at parking buses at schools, and so we've been working with capital projects on that initiative.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Mr. Gatchmar.
3 questions. One, what's the status of our electric buses? We got a grant, but then we put a ton of money into charging. Is that part of our future plans, or hydrogen, or whatever, wind-powered? Hydrogen's actually better than electric.
Teleport.
No,
we
but seriously. So that's electric buses, one. Number 2, would it be cheaper for us to not sell 100 buses, maybe sell 45 or 50, and just pay for the periodic maintenance of some of our bigger 84-seat buses until we need them, rather than spend $200,000 5 years from now? Just a thought. 3, I feel like I'm asking questions that I thought I knew the answer to, but I realized we have a whole new leadership team. I'm assuming, because we did this years ago on the board, everything we're buying has air conditioning and heat, right? For years, our MO was not, we didn't want to pay extra for air conditioning and heat.
In
Yes.
Savannah?
Yes. So I just feel like I have to ask the question.
Need it for right now. Need a heat for today.
So, we would have kids, never mind. We got some good stories. Anyway,
I'm
and
sure
I'm
you
one board
do.
member, so I can't mandate that, but I would love to strongly suggest that the vehicles we use for transportation have temperature controls.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they do.
But we got to ask that.
Absolutely.
No, you're
If
absolutely
I would
right.
not put my child on a bus, I'm not putting anybody else's child on a bus. No.
I've been in transportation for 25 years, and I've seen that cycle where there are many buses that didn't have it. I know when I worked in Cobb County, it was certain special ed buses had it, only if it was in the IEP. and everybody pretty much in Georgia is going to full air-conditioned buses.
If some of the 100 buses we're selling don't have them, I'm fine with that.
Make sure we put those at the top of the list.
Get rid of those first.
Yeah. Mr. Smith?
Quick question for you. Ms. Denise Gorowski brought it up a moment ago as far as the ideas of our buses being parked at the schools. My question is, since we've been in existence this long, I imagine that that conversation has arose or has arisen before. If it has or if it has not, have we identified any pros or cons to the buses being parked at the schools?
The previous two districts I worked in, we did park them at schools. In fact, my last district, we probably had 22 places throughout the district. There was a lot of vandalism,
A
though.
lot of vandalism. Gotcha.
In fact, a few times, we actually had people, including
Sleeping.
one special ed student, well, one person with disabilities, that, because I can't say he was a student, he seemed to be maybe an adult, that's on the camera, and you hear him say, I'm going to my girlfriend's house, and he found keys and started the bus and went on a joyride. So I know Fulton County, DeKalb County both had situations where buses were taken and they had a crash-up derby with them. So there are some risks to it. And there are things that you need to do to make sure the keys are secured and they're just protocols in place. So we are looking at fencing along with that project, thanks to Dr. Watts.
Capital projects has to be at the table.
Yeah, we've looked at maybe 12 different sites and have gone through there. Many of the sites just weren't optimal for additional parking of buses.
Okay.
Continue.
All right, and we're going to talk about CAT. So we've had several meetings with CAT recently, and we're talking about a real partnership as opposed to what we had been doing. However, they did inform us that they are going to discontinue the Zero Ride program. Now, we've asked them if they could extend it, and they are going to extend it to the end of January, and we're working through how we can capture that. I know they had a contract with the school districts looking at, could we continue paying for a portion of that? But they are discontinuing. I have asked them, please, to include extending it to February. I haven't gotten that answer yet.
Mr. Smith, then Dr. Ringman.
I'm very sad to hear that. Very sad to hear that. The CAT has done an amazing job, and the employees there have been phenomenal. Can I ask this? Do we know how big of a hit that would actually be? One. Also, do we know if there's any reason behind it, anything that we did or didn't do on our side to support and create a good relationship?
No, I don't think it's anything like that because they are willing to still partner, but for a fee.
Pay for it.
All right.
It's a
Yeah, so I
payment
don't
thing.
think it's anything that the students
They want us
did,
to
parents did, anything like that. I don't think there was anything negative. And they didn't have real good data to share with us on how many students were actually writing, but we will work towards that with them if we continue
They
this.
couldn't tell us how many kids were actually riding.
Well, and when they were here before, that
They
was
did a
one of the
good pre-
things they highlighted
They
that they
did.
would be tracking. So I do
Exactly.
hope that we can
I think it was more enrollment, who had signed up, who had registered, rather than
Versus
who was
writing.
actually writing.
versus ridership. Okay. Yeah. But it's hard. I totally get for the operators, that can be hard.
Well, I would
Dr.
like to
Ring-
say on behalf of the board, thank you to all of the employees of CAT. Thank you for that wonderful partnership, and thank you for helping the students and children of Savannah-Chatham County Public School System. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And I will echo that, but I'll also say, let's not put this to bed. We're still having ongoing conversations, so this could continue.
Good.
Because I don't think the funding that they're asking for is significant. But we will need to be able to track the impact so that we know we're getting a return on investment.
Okay, Dr. Ringman, then Mr. Kachmar.
I definitely fully support that, even if, I mean, I have no problem paying the half. It was always a discounted rate anyhow. I have no problem paying it as a parent. My son loves it. Like, we'll actually say, hey, we're in town. Do you want us to pick you up? And he's like, no, I'm riding the bus. It has taken since the inception, though, where he was the lone child walking across, standing there, sometimes 20 extra minutes because
Sure.
even on their app, his bus was always a ghost bus that then just showed up. I was like, where is it? It's somewhere, hopefully. And we'd be like, well, we can come get you maybe. Just hang on a little longer. But now he's up to like 9 kids that ride his 6 line from STEM all the way out to Georgetown. And some of them get off a little bit earlier. Some of them get off at the very end of the 6 line. And they love it. He's like, no, I want to hang out with because they're all just on the bus having a good time. So I would definitely say let's continue to figure out how we can do that and provide that for all families. But also in the bigger scheme of things and trying to get choice school transportation, a hybrid. I think like he'd have to wake up real early and I'd have to get him to a bus stop real early to make it to school on time. He can get on the bus and get home whenever. You know, and sometimes he'll fuss. I'm like, you'll get there when you get there. Calm down. I'm not driving in. Have a nice day. But if we can provide maybe the morning, the on-timeness there, and then have families actually, it's going to take time. It's Savannah. For people to actually go, oh, wait a second. They can all hop on the bus with their band. I mean, I feel bad. One of the kids has got like the bass sax. It's huge. The thing's huge. And he's probably taken up 2 seats with that. So, but they've been so accommodating. They know the bus driver's name. Like, they all just hang out and have a good time. So I think that could be, if we could get families to understand, we can get them there. If you're on a bus line and your kid can walk a little ways from that bus line to home, yes, that could be the way that we might be able to open up a little bit more transportation for these specialty programs. Thank you.
Kaczmar. Oh, okay. Continue.
All right. So we are to the end for question and answers, which I know you've already asked several, but
Okay, Ms. Kowalski.
Just one more on CAT.
yes.
In your conversations, are you also discussing how microtransit is a part of that partnership and how we can potentially enhance the launch of their microtransit across the county?
We did have that conversation when we met with them. They were looking at a grant and they didn't have that grant approved yet. So we are still waiting to hear more about whether we can garner anything through that as well.
Okay, so just so everyone's on, so microtransit is kind of like Uber or Lyft, but through the public school system, or through the public transit. So it's a smaller vehicle, it's shared rides, but it's more of a door-to-door versus a fixed route. So I just think there's great opportunities for that for us.
I agree. I know, Mr. Kaczmar, and I was just reminded, you had asked questions about the EV buses. So they have not been without some of their issues. Technology is a blessing and a curse. And we think because we got the buses prior to the infrastructure being finished and those EV buses sat for a while, there were some technical issues and glitches. And I know some of their engineers even had to come and try to work through some of that. So they're not as reliable as they could be right now. We do have them running, as many as we can, but we keep some kind of in a reserve so that when we do have to replace one. So eventually, hopefully, they will all be up and running and functional every day.
Could we get an update on that whole, the charging station, the e-buses, maybe by the end of the year? Just once we have some time time with them, because we got a grant for the buses. We spent money on the charging. In theory, I think they're a good idea, but the technology has to work. But I'd love to know what our uptime is compared to regular buses, what our true electrical, what our energy costs are, because we're charging them or we're not buying gas. Maybe by the end of the year or something, whatever cycle you think appropriate, I'd like kind of an update.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, but let's get some time
from the
using
post
them so
office
we
where
have
she
some
had
real
that.
data. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Ms. Kowalski, then Dr. Howard Hall.
And I'm happy to connect y'all with some people, but I would encourage us also to reach out to Chatham County because they are also looking at a EV infrastructure countywide. So it's a great opportunity to have some conversations with them about, because CAT also has electric buses as well, so.
And I think our transportation director for fleet, he came in as the EV director. However, when our fleet director retired, he was able to take over the whole fleet. But he came from the post office where they implemented electric vehicles. So he's met a lot of those folks and has been on some of the panels for some of the EV sessions that have been throughout the district and throughout the state.
Okay. Dr. Howard Hall, then Mr. Catchmore.
Yes, I just want to ask, what does the morale look like now in the culture? I remember when you did a presentation in July, you surveyed the bus drivers, and you were going to go back and survey your supervisors that work just a notch beyond the bus drivers. Did you ever have an opportunity to survey them and
We're in,
what?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Right now.
We're in that process right now, and we will resurvey the drivers in the spring, so that'll give us a year worth of data to know exactly what's going on.
Culture survey extends across the district, but we can break it down by department. The last day, I think, this is the plug for everybody who hasn't taken the survey.
I've done
The last
that.
day is the 17th to take the survey. It was launched about a week ago, so we will have that data update very soon.
And then another question, the minibuses, what is the max? Is it 15? Because I know with a 15-passenger van, you don't have to have a CDL, so how many
It's 14
students? It's 14, okay.
Mr. Catchmore.
On the people coming in with experience, EV experience and the CAP partnership, our discussion has always been not just, hey, let's share routes, let's maybe get free rides or subsidized rides, but if we're all competing for the same people, CDL drivers, mechanics, EV mechanics, EV computer programmers, why don't we talk about shared facilities, shared garages, shared yards?
You said that before.
Okay.
and it's right here.
Okay, but it's right here, but I haven't heard it in any of the planning or discussions.
Actually, we had that discussion, and they said that because their shop is union, they didn't think that we'd be able to do that.
They can have a union and a non-union shop in the same area, but don't quote me on that, please.
We did ask those questions.
But at least and all of our local municipalities have transportation programs as well. We should be having these same thoughts on everything that is countywide that's using tax dollars. Athletic facilities, recreational facilities, transport, whatever it is.
Makes
So that
sense.
mindset should be applied everywhere, but with CAT in particular, it wouldn't make sense for us to adopt this weird EV standard when it's not adopted in the Southeast or in Georgia, or the specialists aren't here, just because it's cheaper that month. But let's just think holistically and long-term. Thank you. I'll stop talking now. Thank you. Although I said I would before.
Anything else?
Anyone else?
Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you
your
very
time.
much.
Thank you.
All right. I will accept a motion to go into executive session. Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor? All right. Thank you very much.